Hello and welcome back. Let me turn off my AC real quick. Sorry about that. Take a little bit for that to wind down. It is very hot in my office, so I apologize for having that on. I forgot to turn it off. And I get very hot by the time I'm done shooting these. But anyways, we are in the Complete Web Dev series, and we are talking about object-oriented programming. In this chapter, we're just getting a very basic 101. What is it? How to use it? And then in the next chapter, we're going to build a project using object-oriented programming. And I suspect you're going to do a lot more learning in that chapter about object-oriented programming than in this one. But I did want to just show you the syntax and the basics of it. So if you're liking this, please comment, like, subscribe. Today in this lesson, we're going to talk about interfaces. Okay? So let me go ahead and switch over now. So what is an interface? Well, I want you to imagine with me that you are building a system that right now you're going to accept two payment gateways. The first one you're going to accept is Stripe. The next one you're going to accept is PayPal. And let's imagine that in the future, you may accept another payment gateway. Let's say Google or Apple or some other evil corporation creates another payment opportunity, and you need to have your system prepared for it. And so what you can do to protect yourself or other developers in the future from forgetting to add things or make function names wrong, you can do an interface. And an interface is going to force the classes that implement it to follow a strict structure. And let me show you what I mean by that. So let's go ahead now. I'm going to create a new file here, and I'm just going to call this interface.php. And what we're going to do is open up some PHP tags here, and I'll skip down a few lines. And let's create now an interface. So all we have to do that is just type let's see, interface, and then we'll give it a name, and we're just going to call this gateway. Okay, and we'll just go ahead and make this uppercase. It usually should be uppercase, and we'll just call this gateway interface. Okay, and then we're going to open and close some curly brackets here. And in this interface, what we want to be able to do is tell it that, hey, any class that implements this gateway interface needs to have these methods. So what I can do is I say, hey, you know what? All of them are going to need a public function, and that function is going to be called getTotal. And this, so it needs that. And you won't open and close any curly braces here because you're not writing the contents of the function. So you're just going to go ahead and put a semicolon there. Oops, and you need to tell it that it is a function. All right. Now that we've done that, let's create one more. Let's say we need a public function, and we want this to be called checkout, and it's going to take a parameter. It'll take parameter 1, okay? And I'll save that. So now what happens is, let's go ahead and create a class, and this first class, let's call this PayPal. Okay, and this PayPal is going to implement this interface. So what you'll do is you'll type implements gateway interface. Okay, and then we'll open and close some curly brackets here. And now you see there's some red squigglies because this is actually going to tell us that there's a problem, because in our ID it says PayPal does not implement the methods getTotal or getCheckout. So let's go ahead and save this now, and I'm going to show you what happens if we try to go to this in the browser. And we get a fatal error, and this is exactly what we want, because let's read this together. Class PayPal contains two abstract methods and must therefore be declared abstract or implement the remaining methods. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, it's telling us that these two methods are not implemented. So in order for this to be a valid class that implements this interface, we need to go ahead and create those. So in order to create that, I'm going to create a public function called getTotal. And that will be here, and this will return some value, right? We'll return this total, okay? Now we have to also implement this checkout method. So let's go now and let's create that public function checkout, and this is going to take a param1. Now you can see I don't have any squiggly lines here anymore. I'm just going to return param1 for now. And now if I go and refresh, we should have a blank screen with no warnings or errors, and we do. So what happened? Well, first of all, your interfaces and your classes are probably not going to be in the same file like we're making them now. They're probably going to live in separate files because there'll be a lot more stuff going on here. But let's say inside of our the rest of our application, we use this and we will do something like, you know, checkout is equal to new PayPal, and then we would do something like checkout get total. This is how we would use this. Now what happens if the person chooses, instead of PayPal, they want to use Stripe? Well, what we can do here is we'll add another class, and we're going to call this one Stripe, and it's also going to implement gateway interface. Now this is going to give us an error. It's not going to work, but the thing is now if I go ahead and implement these, and they might be implemented different, but they're called the same thing, and the signature is the same. They're going to have the same parameters that they take, and they may do different things inside of here, but I need to make sure that the rest of my application could easily just use Stripe, and now it doesn't have to change anything else. I don't have to go through my whole application and use different method names, because I've implemented an interface that said, hey, I'm safe using this get total, and in any class or any object that implements this gateway interface, be in this PayPal, Stripe, or any future ones I add, they're safe because I know they're going to have this get total, and the rest of my application requires that there is a get total, and that's how we would use that. Now typically if you had something like this, you wouldn't just do a checkout like this and create new Stripe or new PayPal. You'd have some sort of factory that built out this, so it would actually create the object based upon some setting or some stored value in a database. But the rest of this, then it would just work like this. You wouldn't necessarily see this. It would be some sort of build thing. But that's it. That is an interface, and classes will implement an interface, and that will guarantee that the classes have the same structure to them. And you can add as many functions in here as you want, but just remember that if you do that, every class that implements that, whether they be children or parent classes, they will need to implement in some way all of these methods that we defined here in this interface. So it's just a check. It's just to keep us it helps us, you know, maintain our code in the future. We don't have to remember everything. Our IDEs would tell us right then that, hey, you need a get total function. And a lot of IDEs, even our editors, would even say, hey, you need these, and it would at least stub them out for you and make them an empty method inside of here, so you knew you had to go through and put the contents of those methods in there. All right, so in the next video, it's probably gonna be our last video on the primer here for object-oriented programming. We're gonna talk about abstraction. So we're gonna build an abstract class, and it kind of goes along with this whole theory. And so I will see you in the next video.